Artificial intelligence and machine learning are becoming increasingly important in helping state, county, and local governments improve citizen services. I'm Wyatt Cash with Scoop News Group, and here to talk about the application of AI and ML in state and local governments are Arron Judy, Chief of Innovation and AI at Maricopa County Clerk of the Superior Court, and Howard Locke, AI and Machine Learning Business Development at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Howard and Arron, thank you both very much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So Arron, bring our viewers up to date, if you would, on how AI and ML are helping to advance the work of the Superior Court in Maricopa County. And maybe you could describe briefly what were the challenges that officials were trying to address, and how is AI and ML making a difference?
Sure. We started our journey with conversational AI, and that was to improve customer service, get rid of the press one solution, right, to get to a more natural human interaction with our customers. And that's bridged to now we're really looking at taking on document management. It's a core competency of ours. That's a large portion of our business processes. We're looking at applying artificial intelligence in a couple of different phases to remove human scanning and sorting and barcoding of documents. Our phase one is supposed to realize something like 33% of the savings. And phase two with RPA, driving those internal websites, delivering the documents, that last mile, we're looking at an additional 40% savings in phase two. We're looking at using potentially voice. We're having our voice channel certified right now to replace our IVR system. So instead of just going to our website and chatting, you can actually call and speak naturally to our virtual assistant.
Well, Howard, let me bring you in here. How do you see, what's taking shape in Maricopa County as potentially being unique, or maybe a model that other public sector organizations might want to emulate?
First of all, I'm thrilled to be here with Arron. I think he's got a very active innovations group, very capable organization that's driving out of a lot of innovation centered around AI. We do have to remember that AI is not a perfect science, that the Pareto principle 80-20 applies here, that 80% of AI projects do fail. So we have to follow some rules judiciously if we want to succeed. There are a number of ways that AI can apply, and we're not going to touch on those issues here, but AI is quite prevalent, combined with the Internet of Things, can be very powerful for driving smart city solutions that make the lives of citizens far more enhanced, far easier. They can provide very enhanced capabilities for public safety to make the lives of police officers who maintain order in our cities. So all of that, I think, is quite interesting. But I think Arron is really driving into one of the most effective means to apply AI. That is sort of information management, right? He's applying two things. One is document management, which requires extraction of information using AI. So it's at the fundamental level, recognizing a character, whether it's handwritten or machine written, but recognizing it with very high degree of efficiency and accuracy, and then combining robotic automation to help them enhance document automation and sort of take away from routine operations those things that humans have to do. And when humans do them, they're fraught with errors and very costly. So I think Arron is focused exactly on the kinds of things I would recommend on the basis of where he and his team are focused.
Really interesting. Well, Arron, back to you. Can you talk a little also about an example of how maybe real-time or near real-time AI-driven analytics is improving access to justice or law enforcement more generally?
Okay, sure. In a past life, I have worked with law enforcement, counterterrorism, homeland security, and in a GIS setting. So this is pulling in data spatially into a central map. we're able to provide data from multiple jurisdictions, multiple agencies, some disparate, some that are hosted by one, there's one central agency that hosts it for everybody. So we're able to carry that information out to everybody. So anybody with a web browser, any officer in the field in their car can see something like that. I don't work directly in law enforcement right now. I work, for the court capacity, but for us, that means access to justice. That means somebody has a case that may be their livelihood, their income, their freedom, their children. This is customer service above and beyond that. We want to provide the best access to justice, not were you happy with the outcomes, but were you satisfied? Were you pleased with the dignity and the interactions that you received from us?
Those are important dimensions. I'd agree. Well, Howard, how or where else are you seeing state, county, and municipal governments using AI and ML to improve public services from the public's perception?
I think one of the most interesting areas that was the result of the pandemic, right? And we've had a significant rise in fraudulent claims, for example, when the PPP got into full swing, and billions of dollars were flowing from federal and local government into the citizen population. We saw a significant uptick. And AI was a terrific application to be able to dive into the tsunami of data that was coming in. Much of that process being previously handled manually, right, by rooms full of people, but using exactly the capabilities that Arron was talking about earlier, is being able to dive into that data, being able to analyze the patterns in that data that might sort of betray, whether it's a fraudulent claim, whether it's, patterns in the IP addresses from which the applications originated, for example, or simply very quickly matching names, addresses, activities, things of that sort. So I think fraud is one of those areas where AI is almost indispensable. But there are lots of other examples of where the combination of AI and automation and RPA can be a very powerful set of capabilities to leverage.
Absolutely. And then this is a question for both of you. And Howard, maybe I start with you and then ask Arron. What other advice or lessons learned would you offer public sector leaders about moving forward with AI and ML? I know it's evolving quickly. It's, there's a lot of dimensions to getting it right. What else would you advise our viewers? Howard, if you'd start first on that.
Sure. I think Arron has a very interesting, I'm really excited to hear Arron talk about this on this broadcast. But one of the first things is I would engage fully the entire organization, not the least of which is the senior executives within a government organization. Develop a strategy, right? Determine where you are in terms of your AI readiness, your technologies, your people, your culture. Make sure you have access to data, and that data is available through all of the various silos in which the data is produced and consolidated, right? That's important because at the end of the day, data-centric sort of AI is very important, right? You can produce the best models in the world, but if you have data that is inaccurate, right, has gaps in it, then the results will actually reflect a very poor level of accuracy and precision as well. And then ultimately, you need a community of folks that will test and experiment with data and models. And then ultimately, you need to be prepared to hand that off to operationalize. And that's probably where a significant portion of organizations actually fail, is the failure to operationalize. And I'm really interested in hearing from Arron about that full process. And Arron has a really interesting and innovative way he deals with that process.
Well, Arron, why don't you, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, and particularly to Howard's point about operationalizing, like to hear your thoughts.
Sure, sure. I'm a technologist. I am not an expert in the business. Because of that, I'm able to focus on technology, the newest, the most crazy emerging technology, and I'm paired with what's called an innovation delivery manager. This gentleman, in this case, this gentleman, is a subject matter expert on all things the courts. He is my sounding board for my first pass of things. He's also the person that will seed the necessary teams, start prepping and communicating, hey, these changes are coming. We're thinking about these technologies. He'll gather focus groups if we need to test technology. And he will actually oversee that early life support of the operationalization of whatever that technology is into its final destination. In a lot of ways, I say I make paper boats, and somebody else takes those paper boats and carries them forward. And that is this gentleman. I would add to this, sometimes, especially in government, you have trouble finding talent within your organization. Consider taking volunteers. We created positions that didn't exist before. We made names that we had to go fight and prove were real, but it gave some individuals an inspiring job to have now that didn't exist in government before. We're creating these positions, and you'll really find passion there. You'll find individuals that want to keep doing this long term. Data, I would just carry on to what Howard said. It's hard to say what data you're going to need down the road to make those decisions. But right now you're making decisions, or you're gauging success based on something. Whatever that something is, start tracing it backwards. It's a number. It's a measure of something. Where does that come from? And start tracing this back and shoring up that pipeline, that data pipeline. You're going to need that to feed whatever decision-making engine you come up with. I think that's probably a good place to park it.
Well, those are some both examples of, I think, innovative approaches, particularly for agencies that are short-staffed, but also a good recipe, if you will, for how to think about that. And I really appreciate your mentioning all of those points. Well, Howard and Arron, thank you very, very much for taking a few minutes to join us today, sharing some of your insights on the use of AI and ML in state, county, and municipal government. Really appreciate your being with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Wyatt. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you, Arron.